All right, motherfucks. As promised, here's another video up in this bitch. It's gonna be a 2-for-1 today, cucks. This video is gonna be a general video about wrestling sucks. I mean, let's be real. You know, it's gotten to a point now where wrestling as a whole sucks. If this hasn't been clear to you by virtually every review that I've done, then I don't know how else to make it clear, motherfucks. But I will say this. Just because wrestling sucks doesn't mean that we're going to stop watching it and stop talking about it and talking shit, you know? Because now something new has happened, cucks. Something new has happened. This channel isn't even about wrestling if you think about it, right? This channel is more about critiquing wrestling, but more so than that, critiquing the culture around wrestling, right? This channel, if anything, is just more against like what is now cool, right? In the context of wrestling, but other things too, but specifically what is now considered cool. So, that being said, let's get to the video, right? The video is just gonna be about wrestling being shit now, all right? So we're gonna do this kind of chronologically, motherfuckers, chronologically, right? So back in the day, wrestling, I'm told, was retarded, right? You had a bunch of weirdos, you know, in like thongs wrestling each other. It was like all these old, like these Italian dudes, right? With like the same fucking haircut, right? That would just like fight basically. And then at one point, some genius was like, yo, why should we have these people fight? Just have them like pretend to fight. We control the outcome, right? We rake in the money. They don't really get hurt. Everyone wins, motherfucks. But we don't tell the fans that it's fake, right? Obviously, I'm sure the smart fans were like, this is obviously fake, motherfucks. But, you know, it is what it is, right? But from that, we had the advent of kayfabe, motherfucks. Kayfabe, right? And with kayfabe came this idea, right? That you protect your character, right? That because this thing is fake, but it's presented as real. Like if two guys are wrestling and they hate each other, right? You know, they can't be seen in a bar together hanging out, right? That would ruin kayfabe, you know? Like, you're not supposed to know that it's fake. So with this, right, wrestling got a little bit better, but it was still cartoony and goofy and shitty, right? Until, let's fast forward a little bit. I'm going to do another video one day about the history of wrestling according to the hater. But that's not here, and that's not now, cucks. So get prepared for this video. And then in the 90s, basically, right, WCW started getting a lot of steam, right? In the early to mid-90s up in this bitch, right? And WWE was falling behind. So Vince McMahon's like, yo, man, you know, we got to like kind of keep up basically, right? And, you know, things like eventually like NWO, just the general climate of WCW were much more edgy and entertaining, right? And the 90s, for those of you that did not have the privilege of being around in the 90s, for all those of you that are 20 years old or younger, or even like 25, you know, like you don't remember what the fuck you're doing when you were 5, right? Like the 90s really were. I know a lot of people talk about them like, oh, it's nostalgia, like they weren't that great. No. The 90s were fucking great. Now I'll explain to you why the 90s were great, right? Number one, we had way less tension than we have today, right? I remember back in the day in 3rd grade, motherfucks, in 3rd grade, it was popular to like just say like West Side, right? And do a little West Side thing with your fingers, right? Now this was considered like offensive to some people, right? Because it's like, oh, like West Side is not as good as East Side, right? And then, you know, if you did East Side, right? Then people were like, oh, it's the same thing, right? People would get mad, right? And it was something that like, but it was a joke. People would do it all the time and no one gave a rat's ass, yeah? So even kids and stuff, right? So people were a lot freer to express themselves. But more importantly than that, the 90s were like, especially like the late 90s, like the mid, like 97-ish and beyond, 95 too, but like, it was a time of like really good movies like Con Air, The Rock, you know, a bunch of good ass movies, right? And generally like a cultural shift towards fuck you, go fuck yourself, right? It was a very edgy time. Like people were like losing their minds, you know, like people were getting drunk. I mean, I was a kid, of course, but you know, like there was just violence everywhere on TV, right? Like riots. Like now that's not good, obviously, right? But the culture was like an in your face like culture, right? So that's Vince McMahon captured that in what we now call the Attitude Era, right? The Attitude Era, a lot of people don't understand because I think a lot of people started watching wrestling when Daniel Bryan came around. Oh, Daniel Bryan is the best. The Attitude Era sucked. Yeah, because you weren't around then, right? Because, and again, I was very young, you know, like I wasn't this cultural critic back then or anything like that, but I understood what was happening, right? Wrestling was a reflection of contemporary culture, right? Where people were starting to, like, I don't want to say divide themselves in groups, because people have been divided for a long time, but while also being united, right? So it was not uncommon for, let's say, like, I don't know, two white friends and two black friends who are all friends together to just like talk shit about each other, about white people and black people, right? All in good fun. They were friends, you know what I mean? We called this water cooler humor, motherfucks. You go to the water cooler in your office, right? And you say like, hey man, did you see that black bra that did this? Yeah, but what about that white motherfucker that did this, right? And like people would talk about this, right? And it was like, in my opinion, a way to like ease off the tension, not the racial tension, but just the tension of everyday life. You know, people were like, they just go to the, like, they have their little office friends or their friends, right? And they just talk shit and they move on with their lives, right? But this developed this in your face like attitude, right? It was raw. It was like vicious in some ways, right? Where people didn't give a fuck if you were offended. You know, people just like, I don't give a shit. Like, if you're offended, that's on you, dog, right? So this kind of created like the cultural foundation for what Vince McMahon did, which was the Attitude Era, right? I mean, him and like Vince Russo and other people, but the point is that they captured this zeitgeist, if you will. I can't believe I used that nerd word right there, but you know what I'm saying? They captured the zeitgeist of the time, which was this brashness, right? Like things that were popular were things like early Eminem, like Limp Bizkit was like one of the most popular bands, right? And Limp Bizkit was all about like, you know, I want to break something and like scream in your face and like, it's my generation, I'll do whatever the fuck I want, you know, like me versus you, motherfucker. That was the entire philosophy of that. And like lewdness, aggression, right? These things that made the 90s the special time that they were, motherfuckers, right? And even the early 2000s, of course, don't get me wrong, right? But we had all these people who were like essentially unleashed and doing whatever the fuck they wanted to do during the Attitude Era, right? And it just so happened, I mean, this was just a stroke of luck, but a lot of these people were just really awesome people, you know? So you had people like for example, like The Godfather, right? The Godfather wasn't this great wrestler. He was a big guy, but he wasn't that great of a wrestler. Like he wasn't especially charismatic, you know, conventionally speaking, right? But I mean, of course, compared to like everyone today, he would be like the most charismatic guy ever. But he was just like a guy who understood like what was popular at the time, right? So what was popular at the time was things like Snoop Dogg, motherfuckers. And Snoop Dogg was all about that G's up, hose down, you know, West Side. He lifted that essentially from like West Coast rap and Snoop Dogg in many ways, right? And like being a pimp, right? That's another Snoop Dogg thing, right? So he created a character that was, I wouldn't say a parody, right? But a compliment to someone like Snoop Dogg, right? And then at the same time, like pornography, motherfucks, was becoming big once again. Porn has been around forever, but porn was becoming like downloadable now and all that shit with the internet, right? Like with the early stages of the internet. So we had people like Val Venus, motherfucks, right? The Academy Awards were bigger back then, so we had Gold Dust, right? And then the questions that we all had were answered, right? What would happen if you took this pimp, right, like Godfather, and you had him fight a porn star, right? Who doesn't want to see that, right? You know, that's what made things interesting. You know, you had people like you had like a tag team called the Headbangers, right? Their entire shtick was that they're these like headbanger, like trash metal type dudes, right? Whatever. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know that genre of music, right? So you had these people, right? And you're like, all right, let's put these guys up against like something like so rebellious and so like counterculture. Like that was the spirit of the 90s. It was counterculture, right? Because there was an influx of mainstream culture, right, that was being pushed down our throats, right? If anyone here remembers TRL, motherfucks, TRL, Total Request Live with Carson fucking Daly, right? Where this cocksucker would go out there and he would count down the top 10 songs of the day, right? And a lot of times for like weeks and weeks and sometimes months, the number one song that people liked was something by Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, Britney Spears, this kind of artist, right? Like a very low-level musician, right? But with catchy tunes and, you know, like that appeals to like a younger demographic, right? The people that are now in their like, you know, 30s and 20s, I guess, right? So, but with that, right, this is a big difference between the 90s and now. And with that, right, came this idea that there was a significant and powerful counterculture movement, right? This counterculture movement was not like it is today, where it's basically non-existent. The counterculture in the 90s was quasi-mainstream. So you had things like rap at the time was like, as compared to the mainstream, it was a countercultural phenomenon, right? At the time, led by probably Eminem, right? Like when he started coming up in like the like 98, 99, right? And a lot of people were like, oh, Eminem sucks. Eminem doesn't suck. Eminem sucks now probably, but Eminem was foundational in like making rap music mainstream, because what he did was he attacked, right, directly the mainstream stars, the Christina Aguileras, right? So here's a great Eminem line, you know? How does it go? New kids on the block suck a lot of dick. Boy girl groups make me sick, right? So he was like capturing, right, the reality that there was a lot of people, myself included, a lot of people who were teenagers or preteens or probably a little bit older too, who are like, man, I am tired of this bullshit, man. I don't want to hear, oh, baby, baby. I don't want to hear that. That just sounds like shit to me, right? So Eminem's like, you know what? Not only does it sound like shit, guess what, motherfucks? It is shit, right? So it was Eminem, Limp Bizkit, at a certain extent, Dr. Dre, Jay-Z with Big Pimpin', spending cheese, right? He was just like, you know what? Like, I'm tired of this bullshit. You know, I'm making this music no one cares. Here, I'm going to make myself a little bit more mainstream. Big Pimpin', spending cheese, right? And people love that guy. They ate it up, man. That was like, it was really, really like a really fun time to be alive. And pushing the envelope was so easy because like the amount of repression was so high from like, but from the 80s, basically, right? Because the 70s, everyone was fucking and sucking. But in the 80s, people were like, oh, let's tone it down a bit, right? In the 90s, people were like, you know what? Fuck all y'all's, right? We're going to do it how we want to do it. And that was the spirit of the 90s that Vince McMahon captured. And no group captured that better than a group like Degeneration X, motherfucks. Degeneration X. That was their entire shtick. Their entire shtick was like, yo, you're telling me to do it this way? How about I do it my way instead? And while I do it my way, I tell you to suck it. You know what I'm saying? That's why it was so great. You know, these people were like, I don't give a fuck. I'll do it how I want to do it. Now, DX started, of course, earlier than the 98, but it was part of the same same philosophy, right? Of like, I'm going to do it my way, right? And you're going to like it, or I'm going to tell you to suck it. You know, it's as simple as that. You know, like, I'm going to do it. I don't have to respect you anymore, you know? Like, I'm 18 now, motherfuckers. I'll do what I want, right? So this is something that Vince captured. A lot of people seem to think that the Attitude Era was like this manufactured thing, just like the PG era or the Ruthless Aggression era or the Universe era, whatever the fuck we call it now, right? Like these things that are just like where 10 people get in a boardroom and they're like, all right, we're going to just do like, you know, we're going to tone it down and make it PG. The Attitude Era was the opposite, right? It didn't lead the culture, right? Because there was no wrestling culture. There was just culture. And culture led wrestling. It made wrestling what it was. And it was awesome, motherfucks. It was awesome because you had people with so much charisma and personality. People like The Rock, who like, you know, they were like bad guys packaged as good guys, right? If you knew someone like The Rock in real life, you would not like him, you know, like, cause he would just like bully people, but he was awesome because he was so cool and charismatic, right? That people forgot, oh, this is the guy that used to bully me in high school. It doesn't matter. He's awesome. Now he fights bad guys while bullying like Michael Cole and Kevin Kelly, you know what I mean? So this was something that was captured, not just by Vince McMahon, but by Paul Heyman and other people as well, right? And it was something that changed the game, motherfuckers. It changed the medium of wrestling. You understand? And after this capturing of the culture, right? Wrestling had nowhere to go but up, right? People were interested, you know? And here's the main difference maker, right? Because wrestling was culturally relevant, it was mainstream. Like, for some people, this is hard to believe, but it was actually mainstream. Like people, you'd go to the store, people would be like, hey, did you see what The Rock did last night? Like, that kind of shit, you know? The same way people talk about like LeBron or Tom Brady or something like that. You know, oh, did you hear this happen? The Rock like just, you know, did the rock bottom on China or something, right? So this allowed for wrestling to grow exponentially, right? And because it was mainstream and it was cool to watch, right? The audience, you know, people are like, oh, they lost a lot of viewers, but all the viewers they lost were like pretty much all the cool people, except for a few of us, you know, all of which are hater subscribers. Subscribe today, motherfuckers, right? Like the hip college crowd left, right? They were like, no, I'm done with this. Like when, you know, shit hit the fan, right? But for a long, long time, like the crowds were just crazy. Like go on WWE Network and watch like any Raw from like 1998 or 1999 and see how many signs are there and people losing their minds over like Spike Dudley, you know what I mean? Like crazy shit, man. So this made it so wrestling was super mainstream, but like everything else, right? The culture shifted, you know? The 2000s came and shit hit the fan, basically. Let's call it what it is, you know? It was still good for a few more years, but like shit started hitting the fan with all this like Y2K thing, right? The Y2K scare, I think once that shit got passed, right? People really did take to the new millennium, you know? They're like, oh, the year 2000, technology, yeah, this and that, right? And things just started changing, right? But with that came this larger integration of society, right? Where people like, were back in the day in like 1993, right? If you were some weird fuck that liked to dress up as a baby, you know, and stick cucumbers up your ass, right? You probably did that shit in your room, and you're like, man, I'm probably the only fucker in the world that likes to dress up as a baby and stick cucumbers up my ass, right? But then the internet became mainstream, and then you know, some brave soul went on the internet and was like, I like to dress up as a baby and stick cucumbers up my ass. And then this asshole that we just talked about who did this, right, saw this post and that someone else made, and he was like, oh, I'm not the only one. Right? And then 2 became 3, 3 became 4, 4 became 2000, right? And we had all these fucking weirdos now congregating, right? And with all these weirdos congregating, people started like normalizing like all these things that were like, yo, you're fucking weird. Go do it in your own house. I don't want to see it, dog. If you want to dress up as a baby, be my guest. Just don't tell me about it. I want to hear it, right? Now, everything started going towards a more PC culture, right? Because people started to feel guilt about the things that they've done in the past, right? Guilt from things like when they were in 3rd grade, they bullied someone, that kind of shit that you should get over, by the way, motherfuckers, right? So with that and greater societal guilt, right, things became more and more PC, you know? You couldn't say things to people anymore. People couldn't say them to you. You just kept this shit inside. And with that, of course, school shootings and things of that nature just skyrocketed, as one might imagine, cucks, right? So wrestling was like, oh, okay, this is not working out. After several lawsuits and attempts to shut shit down, basically, right? Wrestling just kind of shifted towards what we eventually grew to know as the ruthless aggression era, motherfuckers. Now, this was a logical extension of the Attitude Era because it had that viciousness, right? And then it became an entertainment company. And after that, like the most important shift in wrestling, which is why wrestling sucks today, is what I call, you know, like the neckbeard era, right? Now, this is unique because unlike the other eras, right, this does not exist only within WWE. This exists within all wrestling promotions. Wrestling, like back in the day, right, if you were someone who wanted to be a wrestler in, I don't know, like 1983, right, you would see Hulk Hogan, you're like, man, I want to be just like this guy. I want to be this world famous dude who's jacked, right? The kids love him. You know, he's just awesome, right? Like I look up to him. I want kids to look up to me one day. Maybe one day they can become wrestlers and continue this chain, right? And that's why we got people like Edge, Cena, Batista, like people like, you know, Triple H, The Rock, right? People that were like legit wrestlers, people that are marketable and that are alpha males in real life. Maybe not Edge, you know what I'm saying? That are alpha personalities, right? Then what happened was, the next generation grew up on, you know, Triple H, Stone Cold, right? So a lot of them, like, that's how we got, like, CM Punk and, like, these kind of people, right? Except CM Punk was, like, a comic book nerd who was like, it'd be cool to be a wrestler. He has, like, no athletic ability whatsoever, and he became a wrestler, right? And then, now, believe it or not, motherfuckers, it's to the point now where this most recent crop of wrestlers, including people like my age, like the Kevin Owens, he's a little older than me, but you know what I mean. The people that age, these motherfuckers, right? They grew up watching and morphing, right? Their fandom, right? They changed everything, right? These are the remnants of like the 8 million people that Raw would draw. Kevin Owens is in the like 2 million that it still draws, right? He's one of those fans now. So these are people that think, wouldn't it be cool if I were a wrestler? No, motherfucker, it wouldn't be cool. Nobody wants to see you, dog. Nobody wants to see these jobbers, you know? And now, I can only imagine what the next crop of wrestlers will look like. We've already seen some of them, right? Some of these jobbers that are like very, very young, you know? These are people that grew up watching CM Punk, you know what I'm saying? So to them, being a wrestler is liking comic books, you know, having weird facial hair and having basically zero masculinity, you know? That's what it is for them. That's all they know, motherfuckers. They didn't grow up with heroes like you and I did. Or like, I'm sure some of you that are listening are young and you didn't grow up with the same heroes that I grew up with. But at least you understand that you're the smart ones, you know? These are people that instead of growing up with things like Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Arnold, you know what I'm saying? Arnold Schwarzenegger been his bitch. Van Damme, hell, even Steven Seagal, Nicolas Cage. I'm talking about from an action movie perspective, right? Wesley Snipes. I never thought in my life that I would miss Wesley Snipes, motherfucks. Like I was like, Blade? Wesley Snipes sucks. But then I'm like, dude, if we only had a Wesley Snipes today, how much better would action movies be? Instead now, who do you have to look up to, man? Dax Shepard? Like these fucking cucks, these like people that wear like pink shirts and like wear their like wives' thongs and shit like that, a bunch of weirdos. Who do you have to look forward to? Maybe like Captain America cuck soy boy? Maybe that guy? Who is there to look up to, man? It's all these like SJW pussy boys who are like, oh, you know, like, I don't like how you made me feel, right? You know what Stone Cold would do if you made him feel bad? He'd say, don't do it again. What? Don't do it again. Then he'd give you a stunner and drink a beer over your dead body. You understand what I'm saying? That's what people like, you know? Like when Undertaker went from The Undertaker, right? Like one of the reasons Undertaker is considered as good as he is because of the American badass period, right? Because if he had just stayed The Undertaker, like straight up, a lot of people, I don't think understand this, but if Undertaker in the year 2000 just came back as the dead man, he would not be on the level he is today. He would be like a Kane. He would be like on a Kane level. They would be like almost equal, right? But because Undertaker changed his character, right, which is a huge risk because he had something that was making him obviously great money. You know, Undertaker's always been a good wrestler, right? He changed it all up, motherfuckers. He completely changed it all up, right? And he was like, you know what? I'm going to show a little bit of myself because I see people like Stone Cold and The Rock showing a bit of themselves and it's working out. And the question was, is Undertaker cool enough? You're damn right he's cool enough, motherfuckers. I'll never forget it. One of my friends was like, when Undertaker started dating Michelle McCool, he's like, well, I can't believe Michelle McCool was attracted to The Undertaker. My other friend was like, what do you mean? He's like a masculine, of course he is. He's got tattoos, he's like a big guy, you know, would beat your ass. That kind of shit. People like that, right? My friend understood this. Right now it's like, I saw some interview on YouTube. It was on Ellen DeGeneres. It was Dax Shepard, right? And like, one of the comments was, like, I guess they were talking about Brad Pitt. I didn't really see the interview, but like one of the comments was like, Dax Shepard and Brad Pitt are probably each other's hall passes. Right? I'm like, and had like 500 likes. You know? Could you imagine that shit back in the day? Could you imagine someone being like, oh, I bet Schwarzenegger wants to fuck Van Damme, and people like looking at you as anything other than a fucking weirdo? You know, that's what I'm saying, motherfuckers. You know, there's nothing to look forward to, right? And as a result of that, wrestling has taken its cues from the same thing, right? Why try to like have someone like The Rock, right, or have someone like fucking Stone Cold or Van Damme or anything like that? I mean, Jean-Claude Van Damme, not Rob Van Damme, motherfuckers, right? Like, why have that when you can just like get some discount version of these people called Mustafa Ali and present him as if he's a star, right? This guy is a fucking jobber, man. Oh, I used to be a cop. Don't give a fuck, motherfuckers. I love my cops, but I don't give a shit about Mustafa Ali, right? Couldn't care less, you know? I mean, I guess I hope he has a good career. I don't have anything against the guy, but he doesn't entertain me at all, right? So that's the problem. Now you have all these like fucking weirdos like you see like on WWE.com, like, and a lot of this can be blamed on social media and like the advent of like the super internet, if you will, where like now it's like you see a picture of Seth Rollins wearing like little floaties, right? And it's supposed to be like ironic and cute. It's not ironic and cute. It's fucking weird, man. It's gay. It's a dude, like a grown man wearing floaties. Oh, look at me. Aren't I so comfortable? That's the problem. The problem is that like the argument has turned into like, oh man, like I'm so comfortable. I remember this back in the day. Back in the day, it was like in America. America is in many ways a very homophobic yet also homoerotic country, right? Where it's like men cannot touch each other for any reason, right? But like they shower naked in front of each other in locker rooms, touch each other on the ass during football games. To me, it's very weird, right? But like where I come from, motherfucks, it's cool for like one man to put his arm around another man's neck in a friendly manner, right? There came a point here in America that like the argument became like it was like, oh man, like if you do something that's considered gay, right? It's like you're not gay. You're actually very secure about your sexuality. The amount of times I heard this shit growing up, people like me being like, man, that's kind of weird. Why are you doing that? People are like, oh, because I'm secure with my masculinity, and I'm like, get the fuck out of here, man. That's how the standard is pushed, you know. Before you know it, things that were inconceivable, like wearing pink shirts, right? Wearing pink shirts was like a no-no back in the day. Now it's like, I'm secure with my masculinity, so I wear pink shirts and bleach my hair. All right, dog, go ahead. Before you know it, people are gonna, like, mark my words, motherfuckers. People are gonna start saying things like, I'm very insecure. They already are, kind of. People are like, I'm so secure about my marriage that I let other men have sex with my wife. It makes us stronger, right? The next thing is gonna be this. I'm so secure with my sexuality that I sometimes let other men penetrate me. It doesn't mean I'm gay, right? That's exactly what's gonna happen, motherfuckers. Because if the culture has slowed down, it has pussified itself to levels unprecedented before, right? The exact opposite of the 90s, right? Where people were like, yo, man, you know what? If you piss me off, I'm gonna come at you. I'm not gonna attack you or beat you, but I'm gonna yell at you. You know, it's gonna get somewhere, you know? Now it's just like, I don't like the microaggression that you performed on me, so I'm gonna go complain about it on Twitter, right? This is the kind of attitude that people have, right? Like a lack of attitude. It's just this kind of like weak pansiness, right? Like grown men, no heroes for the children, right? So when you see remnants, right? Remnants of old school masculinity, right? Confidence, strength, a little bit of aggression, and I don't want to say being an asshole, but indifference, right? When you see these qualities now, people, wrestling fans, tend to boo them, right? You have this. There's people that have it, right? Like Lashley, for example, right? I mean, they put him in a stupid ass storyline, but Lashley, Rusev, who comes from a different part of the world, motherfucker, where those things still exist, where people still are masculine, right? And most importantly, the number one example of this is, of course, the beast, Brock Lesnar, motherfuckers. Brock Lesnar. They hate him because he reminds them of that. He reminds them of the person they're afraid of, right? That you see him and you're like, this is the kind of man that I would not want to fuck with, right? Because that's how people were back in the day. Now, of course, people were not the size of Brock Lesnar or the physical ability of Brock Lesnar, but they had that attitude, that don't piss me off attitude, you know what I mean? Right? And with Brock Lesnar, it's more effective because he can obviously back it up. He's a savage of a human, right? But that's what I'm saying, motherfucker. Brock Lesnar is like a 90s kid, right? He's like he probably grew up in the 90s, like 80s and 90s, right? And he's someone that's like, yo, this is fucking stupid, man. Like, I'm not gonna or Batista, right? Or even when it's a little bit older, Batista's like, yo, I don't like the way that Kenny Omega, let's say, does things. He doesn't understand wrestling, He doesn't take it seriously, This is a serious generation, And now I can hear people saying, okay, boomer. I'm not even a boomer, motherfuckers, but I see the validity of it, right? These people that are just too quick to change with the times, before you know it, they find themselves insecure, lonely, right? Having some other guy bang like their fat girlfriend, right? And they convince themselves at night while they hold back their tears, oh, it's okay, it makes me stronger. Like, this is kind of the kind of nonsense that's happening nowadays, right? What I'm saying is this: wrestling sucks now. It sucks now for these reasons, right? Because wrestling has, in some ways, led this kind of shit, right? This kind of like culture has been led by wrestling, right? You propagate weak men, you prop up weak men, right? And we have nothing to aspire to, right? As I said in my other video, people like Adam Page have inspired me now to lose weight. I honestly think in a year, I will be in significantly better shape than Adam Page, Like, nothing stops you from doing that, right? You can take almost any TNA guy or any AEW guy or most WWE guys, and I can be like, man, I can compete with this guy in like a boxing match or something like that, right? I can do it, Like, maybe not now, because now I need to lose some weight, do some like cardio, motherfuckers. But in a year or two, no doubt about it, right? Now, of course, I can't do that against Kane or Brock Lesnar or basically anyone during the Attitude Era, right? Like, I would not sit here and tell you, man, you know what? If I could fight JBL in his prime, I'd beat his ass. Zero chance. Farouk, zero chance. Godfather, zero chance. Val Venus, zero chance. These superhuman looking dudes would destroy an average person, right? But nowadays, it's like, yo, I honestly think I could beat up Kofi Kingston. Like, if you put me and you're like, fight Kofi Kingston, I'd be like, all right, fuck, I'll do it. I'll give it a shot. I mean, he'd probably whoop my ass because he is a pro athlete. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's like a piece of shit, but I would not be afraid of him. You know what I mean? And that's the problem. When you have no heroes, right? When the children have no heroes, they want to grow up and be like CM Punk. This is why John Cena is so important. People talk shit about him because he at least is a hero. He looks like a hero. He acts like a hero, right? And he picks people up and throws them, right? But now people are like, oh, I want to grow up to be Buddy Murphy. I want to grow up to be Seth Rollins. I grew up idolizing Bailey. And grown men who are like, oh, I'm a hugger. They think it's going to get them laid, man. It's that idiot mentality of like, oh, I'm gonna get laid by like being ironically weird, so people really see me for who I am, a really cool guy. No, fam. So in summation, I'm not sure if this video is ending right now or anything, but in summation, wrestling sucks, motherfuckers. It sucks for one reason and one reason only. And the reason it sucks is because the culture has shifted in such a way, right, where now the things that beards want to see, Finn Balor and friends, right, are the things that are propagated. There is a kid there somewhere right now who watched NXT and is jumping off his couch and pretending to do a double stomp as he holds his arms out in the air and his brother turns the light on and off, right? Now, this kid, the one good thing that comes from this is that this kid will never be able to accidentally kill his brother with wrestling moves because he'll probably be some like beta kid anyways, and he's doing these stupid ass stomp type moves, right? Back in the day, when me and my friends would pretend to wrestle, we would like wrestle on beds and stuff, we were throwing each other left and right. Like we were rock bottoming each other, power bomb, tombstone, you know what I mean? Now it's like, I'm gonna do a ripcord lariat. Get the fuck out of here, man. So that's what I'm saying, right? Wrestling historically has been, right, a reflection of the zeitgeist, of the time that we live in, motherfuckers. But now, wrestling has shaped a little bit because now wrestling, despite the fact that it has fewer viewers, it has a bigger influence, right? Because now there's social media and things like that, right? So it has a very big influence on children, right? And also it's geared towards children more, right? So now, like wrestling has shaped all this kind of like cuckery, right? And as a result, it has become unbearable, man. It's become unbearable. You have like, I'm never gonna stop watching, motherfuckers. I'm too invested. But it's got to the point now where we see Marco stunt and we're like, oh, go Marco, right? This is something that back in the day, Marco Stunt would come out, everyone would laugh at him, non-ironically, right? And everyone would be like, all right, kill him, like Goldberg, right? Goldberg would spear him, jackhammer him, everyone would count, and then they would forget immediately about Marco Stunt and just start chanting, Goldberg, Goldberg. Now, there's still a few good ones left, right? There are still a few good ones that understand it. Primarily Brock Lesnar. They go, oh, Brock Lesnar sucks. He's not a good wrestler. Brock Lesnar is an excellent wrestler because number one, he can do awesome moves, and number two, like 2 weeks ago when he was on Raw and they started booing him, he left the ring with Paul Heyman. I don't know how planned that was, but it looked to me like Brock Lesnar took the lead on that. And with that in mind, motherfuckers, right? They proved once again that Brock Lesnar really gets it, right? Working the crowd, pissing them off, right? Like doing things that make you who you are, if you will, right? Whereas in other situations, right, we have the opposite. We have things like Cody Rhodes, right? Ask yourself, man. Ask yourself. The Rock was able to transition and become a mega star, a mega Hollywood actor. Ask yourself, is there anyone right now in wrestling? Anyone, literally. I'm talking about one person, motherfuckers. Is there anyone in wrestling who you could see believably being an action hero? Could you see Mustafa Ali being the next Bruce Willis or the next Brock? Or hell, the next Wesley Snipes? Could you see that happening? The answer is a resounding no, motherfuckers. The only people that have that opportunity are people like The Rock. Even Triple H probably wanted to do it and couldn't. They're like, nah, man, you got a weird face, dog. We don't have time for that. You know, we need someone that's masculine and strong, but doesn't look like a fucking weirdo and doesn't shave his head years later and then wear 30 bracelets like he's fucking Johnny Depp, right? No, we need someone like The Rock, someone that's in your face, bold, John Cena, same thing, right? People that are like, I don't give a fuck, man. I'll do it how I want to do it. You know, don't be fooled by John Cena's gimmick, motherfuckers. So that's what I'm saying. Wrestling sucks, and this is why it sucks. This cultural shift has plagued us all, right? But I have good news for you, motherfuckers. I have good news for you. You know, as time goes on and things get better and better overall, right? Things do get better and better overall. Like, don't get me wrong. There was plenty of things wrong in the 90s, right? Like in the 90s, like for example, being in an interracial relationship was like way more frowned down upon than it is now. Being gay was like something that people did not like, right? And these are things that have changed for the better, right? Because who are we to tell people what the fuck they should do in their own lives, right? Do whatever the fuck you want, man. As long as you ain't hurt nobody, do what you want, you know? So things have changed for the better. And I believe that to a degree, things have changed And now it's going to be time for, things will continue to change forever. But it's time for what I think is going to be a hard stop for a minute, right? A hard stop for a minute, where people will be like, all right, let's reevaluate everything that's going on, right? In other words, motherfuckers, the pendulum is swinging the other way now. You understand what I'm saying? Things are changing, motherfuckers. Things are changing. You see this with like the election of Trump, and you see people are fed up, man. People are, yo, man, I can't say anything, you know. And the media will tell you, the people that voted for Trump are white supremacists, they're racist, they don't, bullshit. It's ridiculous. The people, in my opinion, the majority of people that voted for Trump are people that are just fed up with this like softness, you know, where Trump represents something more than just president. He represents like a return to form, a return, dare I say it, to some form of masculinity, man, where people can stand up and say, yo, wait a second, man, don't piss on my shoe, you know? I'm not bending over for you no more, motherfucks, right? Whatever the person is trying to make you bend over is, right? Whether it be like some group that you don't belong to, right? Some cultural idea. But most importantly, the thing that makes us bend over the most is political correctness, is this idea that like I'm supposed to look at someone like Mustafa Ali and not think to myself immediately, this guy does not have what it takes to be a pro athlete, man. This guy is not intimidating enough to be a champion of any sort. You know what I'm saying? Maybe a tennis champion, you know what I'm saying? But that it's that political correctness, right? Where it's people are afraid to say things like, oh, Tessa Blanchard shouldn't be world champion because she's a woman. Well, I'm going to say it for you, motherfuckers. Tessa Blanchard should not be world champion because she's a woman. You know? Because what that means now is this, that she's better than all the women and all the men. So therefore, the next person that beats her, right? The next woman that beats her is better than all the men that Tessa Blanchard has beat by the transitive property, right? You have to think long term. Just like Booker T said, motherfuckers, you have to think long term. And this kind of pointing fingers, right, and cultural shifts for the negative are the reason why wrestling now sucks, right? They're the reason why last night when I was watching a J-Rance video, right, there was a little snippet in there, like as he watched some videos and he was like reacting to them basically, right, which was awesome. There was a video of these like fat dudes wrestling in some indie promotion with like 3 people there, right? And J-Rance was like, who the fuck would pay for this, right? And he's 100% right. Who the fuck would pay to watch this, right? But the culture is such now that if 20 people pay for it, that fat guy is going to go, gets not signed, but he's going to have an appearance in a company with 40 people. And they're going to watch him, and they're going to be like, oh, he's fat. We can't point out the fact that he's fat and therefore unbelievable as a world champion. And so we're just not going to say anything. Then this leads to having someone like Kevin Owens win the Universal title, man. Like, are you fucking kidding? Kevin Owens? The Universal Champion? Like the world, even Bray Wyatt, the world champion? You had back in the day, you had people like Viscera, right? Who was a fat guy. Nobody marked out for Viscera, right? And Viscera looked like a monster. He had the blonde mohawk, the blue eyes, you know? He had like, his name was Viscera, for God's sakes. You know what I'm saying? This guy was out there just dropping elbows on people, doing the ghetto drop, doing all these like big impact type moves, right? And people, nobody ever said, let's make Viscera champion, right? But now, fat neckbeard, he looks like he works at GameStop. You know what I'm saying? This guy is now like Universal Champion for like 6 months or whatever it was. You know what I mean? People like Jericho and Benoit were busting their ass to become champion one day, only so someone like Kevin Owens can become champion by doing nothing. Get the fuck out of here, man. This is all a part of the same problem. And the problem is that people are too afraid to say things like this. This fucking sucks, man. Seeing someone like Finn Balor on TV, even though wrestling is fake, it is so stupidly unbelievable. Or Daniel Bryan. It's so, like, oh, Daniel Bryan trained with Randy Couture. I don't give a fuck. I don't give a how about that? How do you like them apples? I don't give a shit. My friend from boxing, I won't mention his name, but he went to the Olympic trials and he made alternate, right? This guy, you could see him, you'd be like, this is a big ass dude, right? This guy will never be like a pro athlete because he's a smart guy too. So he has a career, right? And this guy is someone that would destroy Daniel Bryan, no problem, motherfuckers. Right? But when you look at this guy, even though he's a big guy, you wouldn't be like, this guy should be a world champion, right? Even he, right? An Olympic heavyweight, might I add, motherfucker, alternate from a few Olympics back. Even this motherfucker does not look like someone, right, that can be champion. You know who does? Cena, Goldberg, Batista, Lashley. And then below that, you have like Randy Orton, Velveteen Dream, like people that are like, no, not everyone's going to be a Lashley, I understand, you know? Some people are going to be Velveteen Dream and Randy Orton's. Fine. Those people, that should be maybe like one smidge below that. Maybe one tiny smidge, like maybe John Morrison or R-Truth, like that build, that body type should be the minimum for what should constitute a WWE champion. That's it, man. You have to look at minimum like R-Truth or John Morrison. That leanness, that physique, and that height. And beyond that, it is unbelievable. To have fucking Daniel Bryan and Finn Balor and people like Hideo Itami even be in the company is disrespectful to every fan. And that's why people turn the TV off. Because eventually, they were like, oh shit, the guy called Edge, who was a tag team jobber, now he's WWE champion. Okay, the standards have fallen significantly. This is a guy that couldn't beat Val Venus. Now he's out there beating like Triple H. Yeah? That's the problem. And Edge, motherfuckers, is one of the good ones. So I think I've made my point as to why wrestling sucks now. There's a lot of other mini reasons, but this is the main one, Cucks. So I suggest, if you haven't yet, you subscribe today and share this video. This is a good one, Cucks. This is a good one, motherfuckers.